April 26, 1986, a night like any other in the Soviet Union. The sky was calm. The wind whispered through the silent streets of Pripyat. Children had gone to bed, and the city slept under the cold glow of fluorescent lights. But in Reactor 4, something was already wrong. A routine test, a chain of miscalculations, and a system designed to protect lives would betray them all. In seconds, fire and radiation would escape, invisible yet unstoppable. The world would never be the same. Today we go inside Chernobyl, the truths they tried to hide, the heroes who risked everything, the lives lost, the secrets buried, and the devastation that still haunts the planet. This is Chernobyl, and this is the story you weren't meant to hear. Pripyat was not just a city, it was an idea. A testament to what the Soviet Union could achieve when it harnessed ambition, technology, and control. Apartment blocks rose like concrete titans, perfectly aligned, their windows reflecting the pale sunlight of an ordinary April day. Children ran through the streets, bicycles squeaking, kites dancing over playgrounds, and neighbors greeted each other with smiles that hid the exhaustion of the working class. The city had everything a modern society could want: schools, theaters, swimming pools, and markets filled with goods that, by Soviet standards, seemed plentiful. On the horizon, the nuclear power plant towered, a giant of steel and glass, humming a quiet promise of energy, progress, and stability. To the people of Pripyat, it was more than a plant. It was pride, it was the future. But every gleaming city has shadows, and here, those shadows were invisible, lurking inside the very heart of the machine meant to protect them. Reactor 4, an engineering marvel, yet dangerously flawed. Engineers had whispered warnings about its instability. They knew that under certain conditions it could become unpredictable. But those warnings were drowned by ambition, bureaucracy, and the sheer pressure to prove Soviet supremacy in nuclear technology. Evening descended on Pripyat. Families gathered for meals. Children's laughter echoed in stairwells and playgrounds. The streets, once vibrant with activity, now glowed under the soft light of street lamps. Somewhere in the heart of the plant, technicians were preparing for a routine safety test. It was to be a simple procedure, a simulation of a power outage. Simple, but lethal in ways no one could predict. Human stories. Alexei, the young engineer, meticulously checks dials and readings, unaware that a single misstep could trigger catastrophe. Natalia, a mother of two, tucks her children into bed, her thoughts wandering briefly to the distant hum of the plant. Victor, the night guard, strolls past Reactor 4, noticing only the glow of indicator lights, unaware that history is quietly about to rewrite itself. And yet, for all the normalcy, tension hung in the air. Something felt different that night, a subtle shift that no one could name. The reactor's core, deep within its armored walls, was simmering, unstable, impatient. The very air seemed to hum with anticipation, as if the world itself knew what was coming. Technical foreshadowing. RBMK reactors were notoriously unstable at low power levels. Control rods could behave unpredictably. Cooling systems, though advanced, had vulnerabilities. The plant's safety protocols were strict. But human error, fatigue, and pressure from higher authorities were silent saboteurs. By midnight, the city slept. The reactors hummed, and the engineers continued their work. Outside, the stars glimmered faintly, oblivious to the fate about to unfold. Inside, lives and dreams were tangled with wires, valves, and instruments that would soon betray them all. The night was silent, but it was not safe. This is Pripyat, frozen in time, unaware of the horrors creeping toward it. This is where ambition meets human fragility. This is where our story begins, and where the first cracks in history's calm night would appear. It was 1:23 a.m., April 26, 1986. Deep inside Reactor 4, a seemingly routine safety test had begun. But what was meant to be controlled, safe and predictable, was about to spiral into chaos. The reactor's core was unstable, its cooling systems operating at dangerously low capacity. Instruments flashed warnings, red lights, blinking insistently, but human confidence and overwork masked the danger. Alexei Ivanov, the young engineer, stared at the control panel, heart beating faster than the warning alarms. Every dial, every gauge told a story, but the story was already changing. The reactor was responding unpredictably, a subtle rise in pressure becoming an invisible predator. Victor, the night guard, walked past the observation deck and noticed a faint orange glow through the thick glass. He paused, uneasy, but the plant had always had its quirks. Probably just a reflection. he whispered to himself. But it wasn't. This was the first sign of the disaster no one could stop. The explosion unfolds. At 1:23:40 a.m., Reactor 4 underwent a rapid power surge. Cooling pumps failed. Water turned to steam. Pressure skyrocketed. The reactor's roof blew off with a deafening roar, launching radioactive debris into the night sky. The world outside Pripyat remained unaware. In homes, people slept, but inside the plant, chaos reigned. Fire alarms screamed. Smoke filled control rooms. Engineers shouted instructions, trying desperately to regain control. Phones rang unanswered. Panic spread like wildfire. Natalia, sleeping in apartment 10, woke to a strange orange glow on the horizon. She didn't understand what she saw, but instinct told her to gather her children. Across the city, dogs barked. Radios crackled with static, and the hum of normal life was broken by an invisible enemy, radiation. Immediate human reactions. Plant staff scrambled, some freezing in disbelief. Firefighters were called without knowing the severity. Protective gear was minimal. Neighbors noticed a strange mist over the city, but assumed it was industrial smoke. In the first minutes, no one fully understood the scale of the disaster. Reports of a small fire were sent to authorities, but by then, the reactor core was already melting, and the release of radioactive particles had begun. A silent enemy had entered the city. It was invisible, odorless, and unstoppable. Technical reality of the disaster. RBMK reactors had a dangerous positive void coefficient, meaning low water levels increased the reactor's power instead of reducing it. Control rods, meant to stabilize the reactor, were partially withdrawn during the test. An unthinkable misstep that led directly to the explosion. Within seconds, the core reached temperatures over 3,000 degrees. The steel and concrete structure could not contain the force. Firefighters arrived within minutes, unaware that their presence would be fatal in the days to come. Each brave soul entered the reactor building only to face lethal doses of radiation. Their heroism was immediate, their deaths inevitable. History would remember their sacrifice, but the city of Pripyat was already doomed. By 2:30 a.m., the fire was raging uncontrollably. The explosion had destroyed Reactor 4's core, releasing radioactive particles into the atmosphere. The city remained in blissful ignorance, but the winds were beginning to carry the invisible death cloud toward unsuspecting residents. The night was no longer silent. It was alive with the hidden threat of radiation, foreshadowing the consequences. Immediate casualties. 2 plant workers died that night. Over the next weeks, radiation spread across Europe, leaving a trail of contamination. Pripyat's residents, still unaware, would soon face evacuation, but the damage was already done. The night ended, but nothing was the same again. Reactor 4 lay in ruins. The plant was silent, and Pripyat's future was forever altered. In the dark, silent streets, the first whispers of panic would begin. By morning, the world would slowly wake to one of the most shocking disasters in human history. By the early hours of April 27, 1986, Pripyat, a city built to house plant workers and their families, was still oblivious to the invisible storm hurtling toward it. The first whispers of radiation had barely reached local sensors, but the signs were there. Birds fell from the sky. Animals acted erratically. A strange haze covered the streets like a ghostly shroud. Olga Petrovna, a mother of 3, walked to her window that morning and noticed a strange orange dust settling on the city. She wiped it away, thinking it was pollution. Her neighbor Dmitry called the plant office, asking if everything was okay. There was silence on the line. Panic had yet to begin, but the clock was ticking. Evacuation decision delays. The Soviet government initially underestimated the severity of the disaster. Orders to evacuate Pripyat were delayed by 24 hours. Residents continued normal life. Children went to school, parents went to work, unaware of the lethal radiation cloud enveloping them. At 2 p.m., the first signs of danger were undeniable. Geiger counters recorded levels thousands of times higher than normal. Firefighters and plant engineers who had fought the blaze were already suffering severe radiation sickness. Their bravery had come at a cost. For many, death would come within days, weeks, or months. The evacuation begins. On April 27th, around 49,000 residents were evacuated by buses. Officials told the citizens it was a temporary relocation. Many packed lightly, unaware they would never return. Families left behind pets, possessions, and the lives they had built, homes that would become ghostly relics overnight. Children looked out of bus windows. waving at friends they didn't understand they would never see again. Mothers clutched babies, trying to shield them from the unknown threat. Fathers tried to remain calm, even as fear gripped their hearts. Every mile carried them away from home and closer to the invisible enemy. The human cost of radiation. Acute radiation sickness hit first responders and plant staff. Symptoms included nausea, vomiting, and internal bleeding. Long-term effects: thyroid cancer, leukemia, and other radiation-induced illnesses emerged years later. Psychological trauma haunted survivors, dreams filled with fire, glowing skies, and endless fear. Journalists arriving on the outskirts of Pripyat described a city frozen in time. Buildings untouched, meals on tables, toys scattered on floors. The invisible hand of destruction had left an eerie signature: silence. Pripyat was a modern Pompeii, evacuated not because of fire or earthquake, but because the very air had become a weapon. Spread of radioactive fallout. Winds carried cesium-137, iodine-131, and strontium-90 across Europe. Countries as far as Sweden, Greece, and Italy reported abnormal radiation levels. Crops, rivers, and wildlife became contaminated, an ecological nightmare unfolding silently. In hospitals, doctors struggled to treat victims. With little understanding of radiation poisoning, protective equipment was scarce. Knowledge was limited. Heroes fought against a deadly enemy that could not be seen or touched, only measured in numbers flashing on Geiger counters. Heroic and tragic stories. Firefighters who saved lives at the plant became legends, yet many would die within weeks. Scientists monitoring the reactor worked tirelessly, often sacrificing their own safety. Ordinary citizens unknowingly inhaled radioactive particles, carrying a death sentence in tiny invisible doses. By the night of April 27th, the city was empty. Streets echoed with the sound of wind, broken glass, and memories of lives abruptly paused. Pripyat had become a haunting monument to human error and courage. But the disaster had only just begun. What followed would reshape the world's understanding of nuclear safety forever. As the smoke rose from Reactor 4, news traveled faster than the radiation cloud. April 28, 1986, the world first learned that something catastrophic had occurred in the Soviet Union. But facts were scarce. Conflicting reports, secrecy, and mistrust painted a confusing picture. The world didn't yet understand the scale of the disaster. It would soon. International alarm? Radiation detected in Sweden, over 1,000 miles away, triggered international alerts. The Soviet government, initially silent, finally admitted an accident at a nuclear plant. Scientists and governments scrambled, exchanging urgent data and radiation readings. Meanwhile, back in the exclusion zone, the battle against the invisible enemy intensified. Hundreds of thousands of workers, dubbed liquidators, were deployed to contain the reactor and prevent further catastrophe. Equipped with minimal protective gear, they faced an enemy they could not see, yet whose touch could kill within minutes. The heroes, the liquidators. Engineers, soldiers, firefighters, and volunteers worked around the clock. Tasks included shoveling radioactive debris, building containment walls, and cooling the molten reactor core. Exposure limits were often exceeded due to urgency. Some liquidators worked mere seconds near the reactor, others minutes that became fatal. To slow the meltdown, helicopters flew over the reactor, dumping thousands of tons of sand, lead, and boron. Each flight carried immense risk. Radiation levels were so high that a few minutes of exposure could result in death. The pilots' bravery was legendary, their sacrifice often unnoticed in history books. The sarcophagus construction. Within months, a concrete and steel structure, later called the sarcophagus, was built to encase reactor fodder. Its purpose? Trap radioactive materials, prevent further atmospheric contamination, and allow limited access for cleanup. Engineers faced unstable debris, extreme heat, and unpredictable radiation spikes daily. Yet the fight was far from over. Radiation seeped into the soil, groundwater, and surrounding forests. The red forest, once lush, turned crimson from the death of pine trees. Animals perished or mutated, and even today, some areas remain too dangerous for human habitation. The ecological consequences were immediate and severe, a haunting testament to nuclear power gone wrong. Global implications. Countries reviewed nuclear safety protocols, emergency response strategies were revised, and international cooperation on nuclear accidents was strengthened. Public trust in nuclear energy was shaken worldwide. Debates about safety, ethics, and transparency ignited across media outlets. Meanwhile, the people of Pripyat, relocated and traumatized, learned of the devastation they had narrowly escaped. Some returned temporarily to collect personal belongings under strict safety measures. Many never returned at all. Their city remained frozen in time, a ghostly reminder of what had been lost. Personal stories and tragedy. Families of the liquidators faced uncertainty. Many never knew the fate of their loved ones. Children growing up near the affected zones experienced heightened health risks, anxiety, and loss. Survivors recount the silence of Pripyat, the eerie, calm after a storm of destruction. The world watched, horrified and fascinated. Newsreels showed helicopters dropping sand, soldiers in full protective suits, and towns emptied of life. Governments debated nuclear policies. Scientists analyzed fallout patterns, and ordinary people tried to grasp a disaster of unprecedented scale. Chernobyl had become more than a Soviet tragedy. It was now a global warning. The lingering threat. Radioactive particles continued spreading across Europe, contaminating crops and rivers. Decades later, the site remains partially inaccessible, a reminder of the long-term effects of nuclear disaster. Research into radiation effects on humans, wildlife, and the environment continues, helping shape safety protocols today. As the immediate danger receded, another battle began, a slow, invisible war against the consequences that would haunt generations. Radiation had seeped into the land, water, and air, leaving a mark far beyond the reactor. Farmers discovered contaminated soil. Rivers carried unseen particles, and forests once thriving with life turned ghostly silent. The Red Forest, a swath of pine trees scorched crimson by radioactive fallout, became a symbol of nature's fragility. Wildlife that remained showed strange mutations, unsettling scientists and terrifying locals. The liquidators, heroes of the initial containment, now faced a quieter yet relentless enemy: their own health. Many suffered from radiation sickness, cancers, and shortened lifespans. Stories emerged of young men who had been celebrated for their bravery, only to be claimed by the invisible poison they had fought so courageously. Families watched in despair as loved ones deteriorated, a silent tragedy hidden behind heroic headlines. Meanwhile, the world tried to make sense of the disaster. Scientists meticulously mapped radiation patterns across Europe, studying how particles traveled through wind and rain. They traced contamination to farms in distant countries, prompting recalls and food safety warnings. Global media captured the shock, fear, and fascination, broadcasting images of abandoned towns, protective suits, and the skeletal remains of once lively communities. Amid the scientific and societal turmoil, personal stories surfaced: letters from evacuated families, diaries of children who never returned to their homes, and first-hand accounts from liquidators. One firefighter described the surreal experience of standing on the reactor's roof, the core molten and glowing beneath his feet, feeling the heat, the fear, and the inevitability of exposure. Another liquidator recounted how his team worked tirelessly, shifting radioactive debris by hand, knowing that every second could be their last. The city of Pripyat, once bustling with life, remained frozen in time. Schools still had textbooks open on desks, toys left scattered on floors, and theaters with seats waiting for an audience that would never come. Tourists and researchers would later explore the city. But for those who lived it, the memory remained raw and painful. The emptiness was not just physical, it was emotional. A scar burned into the hearts of the displaced. Global governments, alarmed by the magnitude, began to revise nuclear safety protocols. Policies changed, inspections intensified, and emergency response strategies were overhauled. Yet despite the lessons, debates about the ethics and risks of nuclear energy persisted. The disaster had ignited not only fear, but a deep contemplation about humanity's power, its limitations, and the potential consequences of its technological ambitions. The silent enemy lingered: contamination, health crises, environmental devastation, all intertwined in a tapestry of tragedy and resilience. Humanity had faced one of its most invisible and terrifying foes, and while the reactors were contained, the scars, both physical and emotional, would persist for decades. It was a lesson written not in books alone, but etched into the land, the forests, the rivers, and the hearts of those who lived to tell the tale. The years passed, but the echoes of that catastrophic day never faded. Nature began a slow, eerie recovery. Trees grew back, rivers flowed again, but something had undeniably changed. Radiation had left subtle imprints in flora and fauna, mutations, so minor they were almost invisible. Yet they served as silent reminders of the disaster. Scientists documented these anomalies with fascination and dread, realizing the long-term consequences would be studied for generations. Meanwhile, the people affected continued to grapple with loss and displacement. Entire communities had vanished from the map, replaced by ghost towns frozen in time. Families struggled with trauma, anxiety, and the sense of being uprooted permanently. The psychological toll of leaving their homes, the uncertainty of health outcomes, and the constant media attention created a lingering atmosphere of tension and despair. The disaster had not just reshaped the land, it had reshaped lives in ways that no map could capture. Research teams and governments collaborated to improve nuclear safety globally. Innovations in containment technology, early warning systems, and emergency preparedness were accelerated. The world had witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of human error, and lessons were learned the hard way. Nuclear energy remained a topic of debate. Some argued for safer, modernized reactors, while others called for a complete reevaluation of its use. The debate was heated, fueled by both fear and necessity. Yet, even amid recovery, mysteries remained. Contaminated zones were mapped with precision, but pockets of radiation persisted, defying prediction. Scientists struggled to understand how certain materials had shifted or decayed, and why some areas remained dangerously radioactive decades later. The hidden complexity of the disaster fascinated the scientific community, prompting new research and global conferences. Each discovery was a reminder of the invisible power that had altered the course of history. Amid all this, stories of resilience began to emerge. Children who had been evacuated grew up to return to the edge of the exclusion zone, documenting the strange, almost post-apocalyptic landscape. Researchers established long-term monitoring projects, using drones, satellites, and advanced sensors to study how ecosystems adapted. Slowly, life returned, but it was different. Forever marked by a day that changed everything, the world had witnessed both the fragility and strength of humanity. The disaster had exposed vulnerabilities, yet it had also revealed courage, innovation, and resilience in the face of unimaginable challenges. Those who survived, who investigated, and who rebuilt had all become part of an ongoing narrative, a story of tragedy, mystery, and relentless human determination. Though decades may pass, the lessons of that day endure. In the silence of the abandoned towns, in the subtle growth of the forests, in the data collected by scientists, and in the memories of those who lived through it, the legacy of that disaster continues. It is a story of caution, courage, and the fragile beauty of life amidst chaos. Decades have passed since that fateful day, yet the story of the disaster remains etched into the global consciousness. The world watched in horror as cities were obliterated, lives were lost, and the very fabric of society was tested. But beyond the tragedy, this event became a mirror, a reflection of human vulnerability, ambition, and resilience. Experts today continue to study the disaster with unparalleled detail. Advanced satellite imagery, decades of environmental data, and decades of medical research have created one of the most comprehensive case studies in modern history. The subtle ecological transformations, mutations in wildlife, shifts in plant populations, and the lingering radioactive hotspots have provided scientists with invaluable insights into how nature adapts to extreme trauma. Every discovery tells a story of survival, adaptation, and the hidden consequences of a single catastrophic mistake. Equally profound are the lessons for humanity. The disaster was not merely a scientific or political event, it was deeply personal. Families who lost loved ones grappled with grief and uncertainty. Communities were displaced, their memories frozen in ghost towns. Survivors became carriers of stories, memories, and warnings that continue to resonate worldwide. Every personal account, every diary, every photograph collected has added layers to the complex tapestry of understanding, a tapestry that reminds us that history is not just numbers, statistics, or policies, it is lived experience. Governments, organizations, and scientists responded by reshaping global protocols. Safety regulations were rewritten, emergency systems were modernized, and nuclear oversight reached new levels of scrutiny. The world realized that progress without caution could lead to irreversible consequences. International collaboration surged, fueled by a recognition that disasters know no borders, and that lessons learned in one country could prevent tragedies elsewhere. The disaster reshaped industries, inspired innovations, and instilled a cautious respect for the power humanity wields. Yet the mystery, the awe, and the human fascination with the unknown endure. Why did certain zones remain radioactive decades later? How did nature find its balance amidst destruction? And how have the lives of those affected continued? Shaped by a single extraordinary event? These questions fuel documentaries, research, and debates, keeping the story alive in both scientific journals and popular culture. It is a story that refuses to fade, demanding reflection, respect, and curiosity from every generation. As we reflect on this catastrophic event, we are reminded of the delicate balance between human ambition and the forces of nature. The disaster is a cautionary tale, a study in resilience, and a testament to the human spirit. We are compelled to learn, to adapt, and to remember, not just for the sake of history, but to guide the future. And now, as you sit here, immersed in this story of mystery, tragedy, and survival, remember this: knowledge is power, awareness is protection, and history is a teacher that never forgets. The legacy of this disaster is not just in the past, it is alive today, shaping science, policy, and human consciousness. If you've been captivated by this journey through history, science, and human endurance, there's so much more waiting for you. Subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and join a community that dives deep into the world's most intriguing mysteries, untold stories, and breathtaking events. Don't miss the next journey. We promise it will be just as gripping, as suspenseful, and as mind-expanding. The past teaches, the present challenges, and the future waits. What we choose to learn today shapes the world of tomorrow.